Terminology, particularly in the Middle East conflict, is a contentious issue. Terrorist versus gunman, army versus defence force. These are things we've looked at before on The Balance because, invariably, one phrase becomes the default while the other lands you in hot water. And the latest is hostage versus prisoner, now that hostages and/or prisoners are being released in Gaza and Israel.
Confirmation in the last couple of hours. First from Hamas that 3 Israeli prisoners, all men this time, will be released tomorrow, and then we will see 90 Palestinian prisoners freed from Israeli jail.
That's Nikki Schiller, BBC newsreader, reporting on the latest exchange of prisoners. And that is where he went wrong.
And earlier today on BBC News, we reported on the release of the names of those 3 Israeli hostages who are due to be freed tomorrow. At one point in our coverage, we mistakenly called the hostages prisoners, and we would like to apologise for that error.
Now trust me, no one in television news likes making on-air apologies, especially if you're the one having to read it, like Anita McVeigh did there. My question though is, did that need an apology? Officially deeming it a mistake and an error, when it was, to my ear at least, a fairly innocuous moment.
That 3 Israeli prisoners, all men this time.
Really, it seems like the BBC's just drawn more attention to the whole thing, which of course the right-wing British press love because, well, let's just say that BBC bashing is something they really, really enjoy. So either someone in BBC management felt the terminology was wrong, or it violated a newsroom edict on how to refer to Israelis taken by Hamas, or there was pressure, maybe a complaint from an Israeli official or a Jewish lobby group, or the BBC was just worried about accusations of bias, which wouldn't be anything new, because whatever the BBC does, it gets accused of bias, from either or even both sides. But whatever it was, the discussion wasn't limited to that one occurrence. Here is Hussam Zumlot, the head of the Palestinian mission to the UK, basically an ambassador, speaking to the BBC's Martin Croxall.
Martin, we need to agree on the terminology here. You call the Israeli side hostages and you call our side, the Palestinians, prisoners. And the Palestinian people, when they are described as prisoners, it gives the impression that those are criminals who have been convicted in a court, which is not the case.
No, in a lot of cases, the majority in fact, Palestinian prisoners are people being held by Israel without charge or trial under something called administrative detention. So how can you really be a prisoner, officially, if you haven't been found guilty of anything? It's just like they've been rounded up.
When a state, and it's Israel in this case, feels under threat from some people who don't even believe that that nation has a right to defend itself, isn't it understandable that they round people up when they feel threatened by those people?
You know how many people they have
It's a question.
Look, I don't have a problem with Croxall putting across a different viewpoint and asking someone to consider it. That's the approach I believe in. It is challenging. But in this case, it sounded pretty apologetic, asking someone to understand the idea of their own people being, in her words, rounded up and then locked up without charge or trial. I don't claim to have all the answers here. In the news media, you are always going to offend someone. But you know, just call a spade a spade. The actions of Hamas on October 7, horrific. Israel's destruction of Gaza, also horrific. Hamas taking people captive for over 15 months, cruel and inhumane. Israel holding people in jail without charge or trial, also cruel and inhumane. Just call things what they are, instead of making these hard and fast rules which you can't always apply, but which you then feel you have to apologise for breaking. Things just aren't that black and white. So if you want some more context to the story, have a listen to episode 3 of the current season of Rebalance, our weekly podcast. It's available on all the major podcast apps and at thebalance.website.
The Balance. Journalism without agenda.